friends. We're here for another episode about the podcast. And today I would like to answer a question that I am asked often at the store, which would be, how do we not cook every day and yet eat well? So, um, aside from uh, taking out from a restaurant that that cooks higher quality, or using pre-made items that are of good quality. We've talked about this before, that you can use pre-made soups, you can use pre-made sauces that are of a good quality. Aside from that, freezer is your friend. So what I do a lot of times, because again, as we've said before, in an ideal world, you do everything from A to Z every single time. But we live in a real world when we may not have the time, the energy, the health of doing that. We may not feel well, we may be tired. So I always try to have in my freezer 2, 3 either dinners, and that's why I call them the dinner savers, or sometimes even breakfast or lunch to take to the store in our case, or you could take it to the office. So here is what I normally would do. Let's say that I'm making pancakes for breakfast. Instead of making 3, 4, 5 just for that meal, I double the quantities and I individually wrap and freeze the leftover that I have. I know that the word leftover sometimes may make people think it's not going to be a good idea, but in all reality, in this case, leftover is just because you made more on a purpose. So I have at least 2 breakfasts worth of pancakes in the freezer. I also bought some good quality croissants and froze them too, just in case. I always have a whole bread loaf. Sometimes it's rosemary, sometimes it's Italian brown. So the ones that are crusty, hardy ones. And I also have some sandwich bread that I use to make ham and cheese toasts. So those in the freezer, because if I bring my little panini press, I can prepare the ham and cheese toasts. Well, ham and cheese toasts, we call them in Italy, but it's ham and cheese sandwich that then are going to be grilled or pressed in this case. Then for Easter, I made the rolled meat that we talked about in the previous episode, and 2/3 are separately in the freezer, so that say one night you come home, you don't want to cook, you pull it out of the freezer, put it in a pan on low heat with its juices, and it will slowly thaw, and it's going to be just like you made it. Or I do the same thing, bring it to the store, but in that case I just put it in the microwave. I don't have stove capabilities there. Say you love meatballs, make a double batch of meatballs. I mean, the time it takes to make them, whether you make a single batch or a double batch, doesn't really doesn't really take much more time. The cooking time is about the same, but you will have an extra dinner or an extra lunch in the freezer ready for those times when you don't have the time or the energy to make more. Um, Many times I make chicken scallopine, and again, I make more and freeze them in just the right amount that you will need for a single meal. That way, you don't need to thaw the whole thing and then you're stuck not using it all. If you have to refreeze it, it's never a good idea. Then I freeze stuffed vegetables ready to go. I freeze farro, cooked farro. Don't do it with rice, but farro handles freezing very well actually. So I cook a whole bag of farro and then I divide it into the portions I need and put it in Ziploc bags and freeze them. If I make fresh pasta, I make more and then I freeze them in portions. So all you need is a big pot of boiling water. You put it in and it's ready in 5 minutes. So there are many ways you can actually eat very well and not cook every day. You can do it with tortellini or with ravioli. When you make ravioli, when you make tortellini, make sure you make more because it's labor intensive. So you want to make a bigger batch and then freeze them. At that point, you can freeze them in layers, making sure they are separated by wax paper or parchment paper. And at that point, when they are frozen, you can group them in Ziploc bags. They will not last super long. I mean, you cannot leave them in the freezer for a year, but I mean, couple months quite easily. I wouldn't stretch it longer than that because then you're gonna get freezer burns and the dough may break when you cook them. As I said, I freeze pretty much anything. I mean, I make crostata, and if you scroll back, you will see the recipes. But I make crostata, cut it in quarters, wrap it very well, and then freeze it so that I know that a quarter of a crostata is about 4 slices for us. And I know that if I want something sweet, I can get that out and it will be gone in 2 or 3 evenings, let's say. I freeze pound cakes. I freeze sponge cakes in slices so that you want something sweet? Good. You pull it out, 10 minutes, it's thawed. As I said, there are a million things you can freeze. You really have to remember that freezer is your friend and not necessarily for the store-bought ready-to-go dinners, but for your own ready-to-go dinners that, I mean, you can cook while you are cooking no matter what. I make sauce, perfect. I freeze a good chunk of that if I make a big batch. So if I want pasta or gnocchi that cook in 3 minutes with meat sauce, it's a dinner that is potentially ready in 15 minutes, the time it takes the water to boil and the sauce to thaw. So really, you can avoid cooking every day and still eat very well without relying on store-bought pre-frozen dinners or fast food. I mean, fast food Everybody loves fast food, and if you eat it once in a while, it will kill you. If you eat it every day, on the other hand, I'm not so sure it's going to be good for your health. But like everything, in moderation, unless you're allergic, nothing will kill you. So I hope you will give a try to get in some extra leftovers and freeze them for future lunch, dinner, or breakfast, depending on what you're making. And I hope you will comment if you do and share your experience with us. And if you have any questions, just write it in a comment and I will answer as soon as I see them. So I wish you all a very good day. Ciao!